Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Alex Workin, and I'm a managing partner at 40 Capital. We specialize in a very unique mathematical approach to the stock market, where we calculate the market and individual stocks in three-dimensional space. And when we do, we can essentially produce very accurate forecasts on multiple time frames in both time and price. Now, I believe our work is nearly identical to what Jim Simmons was able to accomplish at Renaissance Technologies, if you're familiar with Jim and that hedge fund. And instead of talking about it for a very long time, which I like to do, I've included a number of links in the description of this video. You can click on those links. It will take you to the web pages that describe our work, show you our calculations, show you proof, and so on and so forth. So I highly encourage you to take a look if you're interested in that kind of stuff. What we're going to be doing today, we're going to be looking at advanced micro technologies. I'm sorry, advanced micro devices, AMD stock. We're going to be looking at the time and price composition for the stock and what it's going to do going forward. So right off the bat, I just want to mention that at this point in time, AMD is not a very interesting prospect. It is stuck in between two upper and lower cycles, and we don't expect very much from it over the next couple of months and into next year. However, once we do get a major bottom in the stock next year, it becomes a very interesting proposition because it's going to be a major bottom, and then subsequently the stock's going to run up much, much higher. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be looking at some of these cycles and time variables and price variables. So let me just minimize this for a second so we can take a closer look at the charts. Now, if you're not familiar with our work, which is most people, basically what you see on the bottom and the top of the chart, you see cycle composites, very similar to Hurst cycles, but the primary difference that we implement is that we use both up and down composites, and down composites are responsible for the bottoms, and the up composites are responsible for the tops in the stock. Now, it gets even more complicated than that, more complicated than this particular picture shows, because what we found out throughout our work is that there are multiple composites running for any given stock or for the overall stock market. So, for example, for the Dow Jones, we have at least two upper composites running at the same time and two bottom down composites running at the same time. So, however, if you know how they work and if you can put them back together, so to speak, you can get very close to what we actually see on a three-dimensional, or I should say, two-dimensional stock market chart. Okay. So in this particular case, as you can see, these cycles were able to pick out all the major tops and bottoms. And what it is saying at this point in time is that the AMD stock is increasing into this mid-cycle top, scheduled to arrive. Let me minimize this. Um, Scheduled to arrive in November of this year. Now, keep in mind, these cycles have a bit of a range associated with them. So when I say November, I should probably say plus or minus 2 months, okay? Because of the time uh, margin of error associated with this time variable. Now, we can narrow down the time frames to with these cycle lines that you see on the chart, and these are our cycle clusters, as we call them. And essentially, cycle clusters are very important because they identify the exact date in many cases when an important turning point is going to occur. Now, cycle clusters are different from what most people out there use, because what we found out in our research and our work is that the stock market or individual stocks, they don't turn around at any given cycle. What typically happens is that many cycles arrive together at any given moment. For example, this particular line has, let me click on it and see how many cycles associated with it. Two cycles, okay? This one, for example, has, click on it again. 1 second, please. So this one, for example, on September 15th, which is very close to this point, has 6 cycles associated with them. So what we found in our research is that when the more cycles, the more powerful the cycles, the higher the probability of a major turning point occurring in the stock at that point in time. So in this particular case, we can argue that this September 15th cycle cluster is very powerful. 6 cycles, indeed it is, and it was in the margin of error of this particular top. So we can argue that AMD is going to top out at this particular price junction. I'm sorry, not price, but time junction. Okay. Now, subsequently, and this becomes very important, it's gonna, what the work shows is once the bound stop is put in place, because very unlikely we're gonna see a new all-time high. Once the bound stop is put in place, then we're gonna decline into this mid-cycle bottom scheduled for later next year, in the first quarter of next year. Once again, there's a margin of error associated with this particular cycle. And once this particular bottom arrives, so before this bottom arrives, we're not interested in this stock because there's a lot of interference in both time and price. The 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 time variable or the price variable, I'll show in a second, is not very clear as well. But once we hit this point, then it becomes very interesting because from this mid-cycle bottom, we will increase to this major top for the stock, and that's becomes very interesting for us because most likely, not most likely, but we're going to push above this prior high in 2024, I believe. So um, this is how we do the time part of the analysis. It gives us a very clear indication what it's going to do. And at this point in time, it's basically saying there's nothing to do with the stock unless you want to try to trade it on a short-term basis. But once again, there's quite a bit of interference that suggests that the stock's going to be volatile for both bulls and bears until we hit this top and then subsequently hit this bottom. Once we hit this bottom, the situation becomes pretty clear, and then we can make substantial bets because at that juncture, the stock's going to increase quite substantially. And I'll talk about prices in a second here. Um, from this low to this major top that is scheduled for, let's see, I think 2029 or something like that. Yeah, 2029. Very important date for our future. So let me minimize this and let's look at the prices. So the stock's going to top out in this particular region. I mentioned before there's a lot of interference in both time and price. Our best bet is it's going to top out, between in the report we published 155 plus or minus $5, and this is the range. And once that top is achieved around that September time turning point, then the stock's going to reverse and then decline quite substantially into next year in that particular bottom. So for the bottom targets, we have a number of targets. We can be a little bit more, not a little bit more clear. We can clarify exactly where it's going to bottom once this top is put in place and confirmed. But we do have a number of hits around the $50 range. That is, we expect to see next year. And once that happens, once again, then that's when we're going to be very interested in taking position and riding the stock to much higher prices into this region, perhaps $250, $300. So from $50 to $300, you do the math, quite a significant gain over the next couple of years. And that's essentially a very good representation of the math that we do in order to identify stocks that, for example, are about to bottom and about to stage quite significant moves to the upside. And that's when we can catch those multiples of 2, 3, 5, sometimes even 10x, well ahead of time, well ahead of or well before anybody's aware of a turn on the stock and subsequent increase. So we have the exact targets. We have a much more detailed breakdown of exactly what AMD is going to do, as well as many other individual stocks. We actually have 52 mega caps, and that includes things like Bitcoin, some of the primary commodities, gold, corn, soybean oil, US dollar, interest rates, all that good stuff. We do have a free trial. I'll include the link in the description of the video as well. There's no strings attached, no credit card, nothing. If you're interested in our work, if you're interested in seeing stocks like that, if you're interested in seeing these kind of targets, please click on the link, request a free trial, and then we'll go from there. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be back with another update tomorrow. I believe we'll be looking at soybean oil, as a matter of fact. Thank you. Bye bye.